So, let us now find out what security issues can be had in the mobile environment. So, we had some idea about the attacks, and if we know the security issues to be handled, then we can easily map them with the safeguard for the attacks. Firstly, authentication. Authentication, you know that whether I am a valid user of this system, that is authentication, plain and simple. Okay. So, after authentication, as I have already told you that once you are identified as the valid user, your access limit predefined, which was predefined, gets opened up. So, now when you wish to access something, suppose you want to access file ABC, your list will be looked up whether ABC is there on the list. If then it will be given permission, system will give you the permission to open the file ABC, that is authorization. Okay. So, here the issue is to prevent unauthorized users from gaining access to the system. Of course, it is always true, we will never want that. So, what can be done? Mutual authentication can be done as per requirements. Mutual authentication, this is what we talked about earlier, that if I want to join a wireless network, then the server will not only authenticate me that whether I am a valid user, but so that I can also know that server platform is good enough. Because how do I know? I am simply roaming from say this city to that city to that city. So, I am coming across various network points, I can join any of them. So, I do not have any idea, hence I can also want something from that end, so that I am assured that yes, I can join this network. Okay. So, that is mutual authentication. Anonymity, next issue. This is the state of not being identifiable. That means, issues related with privacy. Okay. So, issues to be considered here for anonymity preservation and other things: preventing other parties from making any association of the user with messages sent or received by it. Now, you see this statement itself is very complex. That means, preventing other parties. What does that mean? Since the message will come from hop to hop, from hop to hop. So, as if there are so many other intermediate hops involved in between, and whenever I see, for example, a message from A to B, I may think that okay, A always talks with B, and I make a mental note of it, say for example. So, such that these things must be prohibited. Okay. Now, this act may come in many of the ways. That means, that the message is going from A to B may not be revealed at all in that way. Okay. We will see later on in some protocol that can also be done. Okay. And even if it says that it is going from A to B, then the prohibition will be at this third party, that it can only see, it cannot say copy it or write it down, I mean some sort of exercise like this. Okay. So, that later on I do not get that feedback that since A and B were talking, so I can be a replay attacker, such that it is prohibited. That is why it is important. Then secondly, preserving the privacy of location and movement information of the user. This is what we all aspire for, is not it, that it should not be revealed in the network, because I do not know who the network users are, who can see my information. Okay. So, preserving the privacy. In fact, since there is not much time here, but all our mobile service providers, they have various ways of not disclosing, mind you, not disclosing our actual mobile number in the network when we are traveling. Traveling, I mean traveling not intercity, I mean even when we are roaming from this network to that network. There are so many temporary measures taken, preventing disclosure of relationship between a user and its home domain. That means, how do you identify that this is the home of the user? Home means, that means, say for example, the server, domain server where you have registered. Okay. So, we can think that does this service provider take our address or some other, say home address or occupation address or some other service address or some other thing to identify to which server I shall be registered to. Say for example, you are in college ABC, you are in city XYZ, in XYZ city also you belong to some particular location. Okay. So, whether the home domain will be associated with that XYZ particular location, that means if there is a server in that region, whether your home domain will be that or it will be based on something different, like say your age group for example. Okay. It can be anything, I mean it depends. So, preventing disclosure of the relationship. Actually, you also never get to know that, right. Though our phone number is divided into fields from where this information can be revealed, but that is not told to the users. Okay. Of course, the implementers have to know, otherwise how will they implement these different services, okay, but not the general users. Preventing any association of the user with the foreign domains it visits, because I may visit some different spots, locations, and important thing is that my pattern may be repeated, because I go to say for example, university every morning and come back every evening. So, that is a pattern. So, if that is say recorded, that can be used in some way later on, I mean in some malicious way later on, and foreign domains here specifically means, that means any network which is not your home domain. Okay. It does not mean that you have to go to some foreign country or abroad to belong to a foreign domain. That is also true, that is also partly true, okay. But here that means that any network which is not your home network. The other issue is alias or temporary identity may be adopted for reference. That is what I just told you, that temporary some association is given to you, but again mind that if this temporary association, which is suppose it is also generated in some way, maybe using some say random algorithm, using some information about you or something. Okay. So, it can also become a pattern, right. Hence, that shall also be taken care of, so that the temporary identity is indistinguishable. Device vulnerability, this is always there, since you are in mobile network. So, your devices have got smaller. So, there are all the vulnerabilities associated. Okay. And you yourself have to be vigilant about it, that you do not leave your mobile phone in some places, you keep it in your bag safely, so that when you get in the bus somebody does not take it up, or you do not keep it in the restaurant counter and then walk away from the restaurant. Happened with you? Happens with anybody. Right. You should do that. This happened with some of my colleagues also in Jadavpur University. She forgot. After 2-3 hours, she remembered, my phone is not ringing. Anybody has not called me. So, we knew where the phone was. So, before now going to these threats and attacks description, let me just go to that slide which I have deliberately skipped earlier. That was this, where we have told about controls. Basically, what happens is that if you want to have security installed in some system, okay, then you have to follow some premeditated steps. For example, in the organization where security is to be observed, then there will be some policies, isn't it? Some security policies have to be drawn up at first, okay. Then some mechanisms have to be mentioned. Important thing is that these security policies are some statements, isn't it? Do this, do not do that, all these things. And mechanisms are, if you say that do this, then how to do, that is the mechanism or the procedure, that means the implementation part, you can say, because policy is only a simple statement. Hence, not always you will find all policies be converted word to word into some mechanisms, but that does not mean that the policies are not covered, not that. Actually, some mechanism may cover the not the verbatim words of the policy, but the meaning what the policy wants to say. Some mechanism will definitely cover that. Now, here there will be some logical aspects and some physical resources also, isn't it? You have the system, actual physical system, right? It is housed in some, say, room. If there is server in your colleges, you have seen, right? They are in some separate room, maybe there is some system administrator for it, and so on. That means somebody responsible. So, security controls are implemented to protect the facility housing the system resources. The system resources and the facilities used to support the operation. That means, firstly the maybe the room, for example, the room where the server is kept, the server itself, and the other facilities which are required to maintain that server, the room and other staffs associated with it. Control, that means somebody must be there who will act as the controlling authority. That means, he will tell that you have to do this and this. So, if that is implemented, that means that the control is there, and whenever there is some, say there may be some error also, fault in the system also, system, it may be the room, it may be the air conditioner, it may be, suppose the system administrator is absent today, whatever. Then that controlling authority again has to tell that do it then this way, some alternative measures have to be told. Okay. So, this is called security control. Now, security controls should provide assurance to the users that information or resources has not been altered and the system actually functions as expected. Why this is so? Because actually whenever at first during installation, during the initialization, whatever the authorities have thought to be controls, we as users obviously believe in that, right. We know that yes, these steps are okay. If there is a certain change, even if a very minuscule change, then also the users we feel unsecured so much. Who will tend to that? If the system administrator is absent, what will happen now? If that is infected with virus, what will happen? Right? We always get so tensed. So, such that it is the duty and responsibility of the authority therefore, to make the users believe that there will be no change in their part. So, here comes another associated word, assurance. Assurance is also very important terminology with respect to security. That means, whatever be the case, I mean there may be different things, different happenings in the system, but this assurance or the confidence thereafter I gain on the system must be there. So, somebody has to give me assurance. So, assurance you can again relate it with different activities. That means, how you can be assured, how a user can be assured. For example, say just a plain and simple example, suppose you, so all of us use mail server, is not it, whatever mail server, right. So, we actually believe the mail servers quite blindfoldedly, right. Why? You can say that that is one part is experience. Over the past so many years, we have heard, we have learnt it ourselves that this mail server has not failed, right. There was no spam or etcetera or etcetera. So, that is one of the ways to gain our faith. Others may be their brand value, for example, I am telling, and some other things, some other parameters if you search will come up, right. So, all these things actually have gained their presence for assurance. So, similarly, here also for your own computer system, right. When you buy a computer system, you go for say some particular brand many a times, right. And many a times we do not go for brands also, because we have heard from our friends, maybe from your teachers, that yes, these unbranded machines also work very fine for 3-4 years, there is no problem. So, no problem, you can buy that also. So, that is assurance, that means it is made up of some assumptions. If it is a branded machine, it is an assumption. Okay. Some other trust factors from your friends you have heard. Which friends? The friend you know from childhood, that he or she has this machine, it is working fine, so you are buying that. So, in this way assurance will build up. Okay. Because why I am telling this is that if you later on pursue your work with security, these terminologies you must know, that is why. Validation controls, now you see a very different terminology. Validation controls refer to tests and evaluations used to determine compliance with specifications and requirements. Now, important thing is that, do you think that if I write down that these are the policies, these are the implementations, I can write it in my own way, but how do I know that they are actually with respect to some standard? Is not it? All of us must be able to judge against some authorized or published, you can say, some standard specification, just like the machine you buy. So, for security also there is something like that. Okay. So, control and that too validation control will refer to the tests and evaluations that may be used to determine compliance with the security specifications and requirements. Okay. That means, if you have this and this system, then what does the published standard say? So, the published standard may say some points, you try to incorporate them into your policy, and then you have test whether these are followed or not. That is validation control. For example, physical access control, that means physically accessing the system. It should be restricted the entry and exit of the personnel, right, both during the normal business hours and at other times. That is very true in your lab. You can also see there is a timing, right, for such and such students, for research scholars, for others maybe, if possible. Control of media, devices should be kept in secure locations. That means, against, I mean, these the examples are basically talking about physical security, physical control. That means, in your lab or in any lab there may be, say you have laptops for example. So, simply there may be an almirah where after the use you all deposit your laptops there, okay, because laptop is a small device, it can be taken away any time. So, it is under lock and key, like that. Interception of data, direct observation, interception of data transmission to be avoided. So, here you see some aspect of network control is there, because nowadays not a single device is unconnected, right. We are always in the network, that means connected devices. Hence, direct observation, that means that snooping sort of thing. Interception, that means you should not take up the data that is being transmitted from one endpoint to the other endpoint. How can you take up? Obviously, you cannot take up, right. That means, some network entity shall not be allowed to do that, or even if it does, if you have already encrypted your data, then he will not be able to read it, right. That means, you again are providing some solution also. If this is to be done, then how? That is the implementation procedure, and therefore, you can test it also. So, your validation control is coming in the picture. So, this is the, I mean, you can say the how security controls are imposed on the any system. So, now we can go to attacks. These threats or attacks are for any type of network. I think you have heard the terminology phishing. So, phishing is an attempt to acquire obviously sensitive information, and in a network there are so many sensitive information. I mean, I am telling network because our device is always connected, that is why. Even if you are thinking that this is a single device, right, but actually it is connected to some network. So, even if you are logging in here, it can be recognized by anybody. I mean, though it is, you are thinking that it is your own desktop, okay, but the information can be taken up. So, sensitive information like login IDs or usernames, passwords, credit card details obviously, and you can be rest assured that these are not for good reasons, but for some malicious reasons. Okay. So, who will do that? Now, generally you see, for example, credit card, when we transact online, there are certain gateways, payment gateways, as if who are recognized. How recognition happens? That is a different section again. I will say a word or two about that later on. Okay. But whatever be the case, say for example, you know that okay, this is the name of a transaction gateway. So, I can use it, it is more or less well known. So, you use that. So, you put your credit card details, even if you write, I mean do not tick that in the box that do not remember, okay. It may remember because you are already typing. So, it is in the buffer, some buffer, it can be stored if wanted, right. So, without knowingly or unknowingly it may be stored, I mean it can be taken, I am not telling stored, it can be taken, information may be taken, and if taken they can be used for some very different reasons altogether. Okay. So, who will perform it? By masquerading as a trustworthy entity in an electronic communication. So, of course, that gateway, if it is impersonated by somebody, the name is same, it looks the same. So, we will never understand, we may not understand at all, right. So, we can fall into that trap. Typically carried out by email spoofing or instant messaging. Email spoofing, I can tell you that many a times you get emails from banks, okay. Everything looks same, but only the URL will be somewhat different, by which you will understand that this is not exactly the bank website. And generally this comes as email and there may be an attachment. I mean many things, many malicious acts can be done via these emails. Okay. There can be attachment, there may be a link in your mail or in your instant message where you click and you actually get into a trap. Okay. So, this is called phishing. Spoofing we have talked about, but we have talked about it in a abstract level. So, basically it is IP address spoofing, that means it is getting or creating the IP packets with a forged source IP address. I mean here we are writing source IP address because we want to tell that the originator as if is becoming impersonated by somebody else. Okay. And obviously, the attacker or the malicious node who is doing that, obviously with the purpose of concealing the identity of the sender or impersonating another computing system, because the attacker's motive will always be malicious. Okay. So, it will hide its own identity, take up the identity here the IP address of somebody else and just send the packets. Okay. Now, therefore, we can stop here and we will do this after the tea break. Okay.